Blue.
Blue, my boy, Blue is all I can think.
That's all you can't help but think about that too. Welcome to the Loaded Goat. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Christopher.
Yeah, today we're doing Barney's Bloodhound, which, yes, I will admit, when I would hear him call for Blue, I couldn't help but also think of Will Ferrell saying, "You're my boy, Blue."
Just a beautiful, beautiful boy. Beautiful boy.
I mean, so what'd you think of this episode?
Okay, fun at the beginning. I think it's our first dog in a while, or first dog that I haven't.
It's the first dog since dogs.
Dogs.
Yeah.
Dogs. And so I enjoyed that, but then we end with like the most overdone motif in the Andy Griffith Show. That had me like soured on the episode at the very end.
You know, it's funny. We were talking about, like, last week we did Aunt B's romance. We've talked about how seeing Aunt B with yet another dude trying to take advantage of her is just not always the easiest to watch. Manhunt episodes to me are always pretty entertaining because they are great physical comedy by Barney. You know what the score is going to be.
Yeah.
But I feel like throwing this uncooperative dog in really just kind of gives it a lot of entertainment and some good physical comedy.
It gives it oomph, I would say. And maybe I'm just, I'm not thinking about what things were like at the time. I live in this globalist society where, our world is so big in 2023, as it is. And maybe in the 30s we had manhunts and we had swindlers of older women, and that's what life was.
The funny thing is when there is an escape.
You can take that seriously? Come on.
No, I'm not going to take that seriously at all. I mean, I do think it's interesting, though. Escape convicts and watching out for yourself. I mean, obviously, I guess it's not as much of a thing as much as it used to be. I think people broke out of prison a lot more back during that period.
That's true. That was before they had those tall walls,
I think the penal system has gotten much more sophisticated and, where you can't really break out of prison as easily as you used to.
I think you just wanted to say penal.
I did not. And I think the other thing is a lot of these maximum security prisons are much more difficult to get out of. I mean, as the prison consultant explained to us, at a minimum security prison, you can literally just walk off of it.
Yeah. And things are different at, Rikers.
At Rikers. It's just, I don't know, everything I've ever read about Rikers. It's different and not very sanitary and not really, not a place you want to be.
Yeah.
All right. Should we dive in?
Let's dive in.
All right. This episode first aired on October 26th, 1964. It was actually the first one shot of the season, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Why do you think that was? Do you think the dog had a scheduling conflict?
I think they just started shooting episodes. I mean, Randy Turner might know the answer to this, but I think they just started shooting episodes, and obviously they go with an Opie one first, like they always do.
Yep. Okay. All right.
Yeah. We open with Barney walking through town meaning business, and he looks really like, what's going on here? And
insane urgency.
And he gets to the jail, and it turns out that it is time for the radio program, Leonard Blush, the Masked Singer.
Do you think Leonard Blush is the earlier version of Prairie Home Companion?
I don't think so.
Okay.
They listen along, and there's an interruption with a news bulletin about an escaped convict named Ralph Neal. And he is armed and dangerous.
Oh, I thought they said Ralph Nader.
Yeah, he is going around holding corporations accountable and protecting consumers. That's what he's doing.
One big seatbelt after another.
Watch out for Ralph Nader. So Barney says they need to be prepared, but Andy says the state police probably have 200 to 300 people looking for him. And then, of course, Barney says they need to be prepared vis-a-vis, which is, obviously one of his... Vis-a-vis. Andy tells him to turn Leonard Blush back on, and Barney says, Leonard Blush! Is that all you can think about? And he storms off. Andy turns Leonard Blush back on. If you recognize the voice of the announcer...
I did not.
In Leonard Blush, I'm going to guess you didn't. But if
Lenny
anybody
Bruce.
did, it was not Lenny Bruce. It was Howard Morris.
Oh, don't know who it is.
That was Ernest T. Bass.
Oh, I know who that is.
And he directed this episode. This was the first episode he ever directed.
Oh, this is like Larry David being every other voice in Seinfeld.
No, he just happened to fill in a pinch to cover these voices since he was directing the episodes.
Oh, okay.
Directing the episode, yeah.
Cool.
So he cut to Barney walking down the street, trying to hang on to a big dog. He opens the door, and Andy says someone thinks they saw the convict in Mount Pilot. And Barney tries to introduce him to the dog, but he has to fight to pull him inside. Finally gets him in there, and his name is Blue, and he's part Bloodhound. And he tells Andy the dog is going to lead him to the criminal.
Have you seen the YouTube video of the little toddler trying to walk up to a black bear and say, "I want to go pet the dog, the big dog"? It's adorable. And it's a black bear, and the parents are like really trying to keep the kid away from the bear. It's like, I want to pet the dog. And
is it out in the wild?
It's like on the other side of their fence. There's like they're like trying to get the kid inside, but they're the kid's within 5 feet when the video is taken, and the toddler says dog the same way that Andy Griffith says dog.
Dog. Well, it's this dog is not a cooperative dog. And Barney shows him the special whistle and he blows in it, and the dog gets really mad. And then he stops. And then Andy tells Barney he doesn't think that dog could find its own food dish. I don't disagree.
No, I don't think so either. That dog, I'm not a big dog person. That's a cute looking dog.
It's a cute looking dog.
I bet that dog sheds too much, which is annoying.
He looks like a handful. He's not loyal. He's a
cat.
I mean, he was a cat. If he was a cat, he'd be gone. That's the thing. He wouldn't be hanging out. But Andy makes his comment. Barney says he'll prove him wrong by having him sniff a handkerchief from Floyd's. And so they go find Floyd. And it doesn't work. But Barney leads the dog to Floyd's. And Floyd
it looks like so once my wife did 4-H growing up, and once she showed me like a lamb to our friends, it involved a lot of kneeing in the neck. And this is very similar to what Barney was doing to try to get the dog into the barbershop.
Yeah, Blue's not having it. But then Floyd asks if he's looking for someone, and Andy tells him he's looking for Floyd, and Floyd says, "I'm right here.
We found him.
But the dog eventually finds Floyd, but it turns out Floyd gave him a lollipop earlier, and now he's back for another lollipop.
A dog with a lollipop. Where will it end?
And then Andy says the dog will lead him straight to the criminal, provided he has a pocket full of lollipops.
Could be true.
Now, what is kind of silly...
Actually, I have a thing on that. So let's say the criminal is a bank robber. He robs all things in banks, including those little dum-dum baskets. So maybe he could have lollipops.
Yes. If you were robbing a bank and you're worried about the dogs finding you, don't steal the lollipops too.
Mm-hmm. Or the mutton.
Don't steal the mutton. Don't steal anything that could attract the dog. But Barney has to use the whistle to get the dog to leave because the dog is just really not having it. And we cut to Andy meeting with the state troopers on the plans for finding Neil, and it turns out they need his help. And they hear the dog and asks if he can be put to use, and Andy says no, and they leave. And
devastating. End of this canine's career.
Well, it's not, and this is kind of where we're always a little bit like, Andy, why would you let Barney bring the dog?
But here we are.
But then Barney comes in and says he's getting the dog trained, and Andy tells him they're going to have to help with the manhunt, and he calls for Blue. And Blue won't come, so Barney blows the whistle, and finally Blue pounces on him.
We think that Blue was out at a Jello wrestling match.
Blue was sleeping. Blue was not. Blue was at a jelly wrestling match, and he came this close to having a heart attack before the match started.
We are referencing old school.
Yes,
we're not just randomly talking about jelly wrestling today.
Yes, not today. Nevertheless, Andy lets him bring Blue, and so they go to the forest, and Blue is not moving. And they finally get him out of the car, and Andy laughs at him and goes, "What, are you going to show him a picture?" And Barney, goes, "No, I'm not going to do that." And then, of course, that's exactly what he does. And he slaps Blue, gives him a swat, and Blue takes off. And Andy says Barney can chase Blue, but he's got better things to do. Which this whole thing is just kind of like, if this guy is armed and dangerous, Andy's not going to turn Barney loose to go chase a dog.
I think he would because he's tired of Barney. He's like, all right,
I think
2 birds with 1 stone.
So you think deep down he hopes the convict finds Barney and ends his life.
Yeah. Did you not think that?
You thought that? I did not. I mean, I've seen this. I'm not watching this show for the first time. I would think as many of these episodes as you've watched, you would not assume that either.
You never know when things change,
When the Andy Griffith Show went dark.
Takes a dark turn. It's like the middle of Hostel, when it just becomes a horror movie. And you're like, oh, we didn't expect that now, did we?
You didn't? I mean, I understand that it started with these kids goofing off in Europe and then going to this amazing hostel in Slovakia, but the trailer kind of gave away that this was going to get bad.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be Eurotrip too.
Oh, I'm sorry. That must have really traumatized you when things just really turned on a dime.
When I sat down to watch Hostel, one of my sister's friends came and stood between us and the TV and begged us not to watch it. She was like, "I saw part of it. It changed me. Do not watch this movie." And we're like, "Turn it on."
Well, I've only seen the first one, and I am just like this.
There are more? Oh God!
Oh, there's three. Yeah,
oh,
there's two or three more. I mean, and there's. I'm like, this is just. It's an interesting premise, but this is just. It's just so violent and so kind of unpleasant. I mean, there's it's not my jam.
Yep.
Yeah, we won't be doing a Loaded Goat revisit of Hostel.
No.
So basically, Barney chases after Blue, and Blue goes up to a man who's fishing, and we immediately can tell it's the convict because he's got his gun out. But Barney doesn't realize that, and Barney gets Blue, and he sits down next to him, and Barney tells him to be careful because there is a convict on the loose. And Barney starts describing him and says he's got a picture of him, and he takes it out and realizes it's the convict, and the convict pulls a gun. I will tell you, like, there are things that I could be sitting around thinking about, and it just makes me laugh. And always the image of Barney taking that picture out and then looking up and realizing it was the convict always makes me laugh every time I think.
Oh, really? Oh, that's cute. I'm happy to hear that.
It's just so I just think it's some great acting by Don Knotts. And we go to commercial, and this first act actually I always comment on when we go to commercial if it's longer, and this was pretty long, 15 minutes and 29 seconds.
All the way through.
Yeah, it's
a whole SpongeBob episode.
Is that how long a whole SpongeBob episode is?
Yeah, there were 2 per 30-minute period, so there were about 12.
Gotcha. So this episode was produced by Pod Machine. They do great podcasts at a great rate. Go to podmachine.com to learn more and enter Loaded Goat at checkout for a 10% discount. And after the break, the convict is making Barney walk, in the direction he wants him to. He's got a gun to him. He gets Blue to follow. Neil, the convict, is played by Arthur, Badanides. He is a character actor who I first saw in some of the Police Academy movies.
I don't know him at all.
Have you ever seen any of the Police Academy movies?
No, but I've seen some police movies.
The Police Academy movies were not to be taken seriously. They were about these goofy. The first one was Steve Guttenberg and some others, and it was all about these goofy guys who were trying to get through Police Academy.
Or like Goofenberg.
I saw a rule one time that says you can't think of this Gutenberg Bible without thinking of Steve. And, and I feel like that's kind of true.
Yeah, that's funny.
I thought they were hilarious when I was 8 and 9 years old. I don't know how funny I think they are now.
Okay. Can we take a moment to talk about a new show I'm watching that's about, cops and lawyers, which is kind of where you were going with this for a second?
Oh, yeah, that's exactly where I was going with it. Yes, but please, let's talk about what you want to talk about.
Have you seen The Lincoln Lawyer on Netflix?
I have not. I have seen the Lincoln Lawyer movie. Becky likes my wife likes the Lincoln Lawyer show.
I have gotten really into it in the last week. I didn't see the movie. It is a fun. I think it's smart how they approach the cases. I would give it a big thumbs up. Just finished season 1.
Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Thank you.
So after they get moving, Andy comes up and finds Barney's hat and the photo of the convict, and it's clear what's happened because this happens basically every time they go on a manhunt on the Andy Griffith Show.
Mm-hmm.
So cut to Barney. He's tied up at the Forbes cabin, who I guess they're out of town, and Barney explains to him that he's trespassing, which I'm sure that's really making the convict shake in his boots.
But what if it worked? He's like, "Ooh, got me."
I'm trespassing. Oh, well, okay. I've busted out of a maximum security prison. I've taken a policeman hostage.
But I don't
want
trespass. Everyone's got a red line.
Yeah.
For Obama, it was chemical weapons in Syria. For Ralph Nader, it's trespassing.
As Omar Little says, a man must have a code. So the convict goes outside for water, and Barney tells Blue to bite the rope. And instead, Blue bites Barney's hand, which I think is a pretty funny scene.
Yeah.
So Andy comes up to the cabin. He's just kind of slowly inspecting everything, but inside the convict is sleeping, and quite deeply sleeping.
He falls asleep immediately. And the other piece that just was like, you can't, just because you put someone's arms tied behind their back behind a chair doesn't mean they have to sit there. Like, you can like move forward and still stand up, and he's very not concerned. He's putting a lot of faith in Blue, which made me think Blue's a plant of Ralph Nader's.
Ralph Nader. Ralph Neal.
Ralph Neal.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep saying Nader.
I know you are. But anyway, he's sleeping deeply. Maybe he's exhausted from being on the run.
It is hard.
But his tying up of Barney Fife is very slapdash.
Yeah, it is.
So he's sleeping, and Barney gets up and tries to sneak out. He's got his hands tied behind his back, and Blue barks at him. You're just like, I'm like, I hate this dog. He's such an awful dog.
Mm-hmm.
And the convict wakes up.
Send him to the pound. That's what I say.
I know. You
on a Thursday.
Why on a Thursday?
I don't know.
No. The convict wakes up and he makes Barney sit back down, and Barney then says, "Thanks a lot, Blue," which I just think the way he says this is just hilarious too.
I agree.
So the convict immediately goes back to sleep. I mean, just immediately. It's hilarious. And Barney tries to stand up, and Blue does too. And Barney calls Blue a traitor. And then Andy gets his attention through the window. I was trying to follow what they were trying to say to each other. Could you understand what Andy was trying to say to him?
Not in the slightest. I could with Don Nuts for a little bit at the very beginning. And then I thought that was maybe what the humor was, is that they're not supposed to understand what the other one's saying. And that's where I thought the joke was going. Well, then they kind of did. So maybe it's intentionally supposed to be not clear.
Yeah, I don't know. But basically, they do have some sort of misunderstanding, because Barney runs out as Andy runs in. Convict captures Andy, and Andy says, "Well, my deputy's on his way. You're going to have a posse here in a bit." And the convict's like, well, I'm going to take you with me then. When they start to leave, and Barney's hanging outside the door.
Yeah.
So Neil ends up doing what, Mick Dundee did in Crocodile Dundee 2. And he basically makes Barney wear his outfit, and he wears Barney's uniform.
Little snug. Ralph Nader, a little snug.
Well, it is a little snug. I agree. He's bulging out of that uniform,
which is funny. I'm glad that they did it that way.
Yeah. They get to the car, and Neil asks where Blue is. I don't know why Neil wants Blue coming along on this, but of course Blue has proof.
He's been his partner in crime.
Yeah, that's true. He has. And so Andy tells him to call him for the whistle, and Barney's like, "Andy," and Andy makes him shut up, and he does with the whistle, and Blue comes charging him, and Andy gets his gun, and they arrest the man as Barney praises Blue.
So when they arrest him, it's kind of like they're playing tag, and it's like, "Oh, you got me, okay," or like capture the flag, and like, "All right, well, I'm there. I'm not going to try anymore." It's like as soon as they get the hand on the gun, they limply hold the guns in their hands 4 inches from him, and then he's just given up. He's like, "Oh well." Yeah,
and this guy Neil kind of strikes me as someone, if you weren't looking and he needed to get away, he'd cut you.
Yeah, for sure. You want to stand back a little bit further, get those zip ties out, get yourself in control of the situation.
Yeah. And then in the epilogue, I think if you've got a dangerous convict in, now is not the time to worry about cleaning the other cell.
I would agree with that.
That's just me. Or teaching the dog to play fetch.
Yeah.
So... But that's what we're seeing. Neil is once again asleep in the cell. This guy can sleep anywhere. And Barney is trying to train Blue to play fetch with the cell key.
I thought you could say flip cup for a second.
Flip cup. Now, that would be something. And then Andy's cleaning up the cell, and he tells Barney to come in and give him a hand. You're like, well, we all know where this is going. And Barney gets excited and comes in and shuts the door. Andy's really irritated, as he should be. And then, of course, Neil wakes up and starts calling for Blue. And so Andy and Barney start having to do the same thing. And Andy tells them to use the whistle, and Blue runs and brings them the key, and they're letting themselves out as we close. But, man, I mean, there are just episodes where everybody's just, I think one of the things that people love about this show is it's just kind of familiar, and it's one of those things that you really, you just enjoy kind of, seeing these same characters, seeing them, seeing things that are familiar and enjoying things. But I do sometimes really find the same tropes straining credibility. And I know that may make me sound like I'm a huge fan of this show, but it is one of these things as we're sitting around breaking it down where as we talk about it, it does become, it is something that becomes more top of mind.
It annoys me because I think the writers clearly have skill. It's a do better, try harder situation. They're phoning it in on these types of episodes.
You think so?
Yeah. I mean, be more creative.
Yeah, I always wonder. I would be curious to know what the thought process was. And I don't because were they saying, let's do something the fans enjoy? Or is this something that fans are going to watch and say, we know they're going to see this happening and they're just going to enjoy it? Or is it?
I don't think they were thinking about the fans at all. I mean, it's like, imagine you've got multiple, like at this point, 7 Seinfelds where they're waiting to get into a restaurant. Like, it's like, yeah, fans enjoy it. Let them watch that episode again.
Yeah. That's a fair statement. I mean, that would be, there are some episodes where you're like, yeah, there are some sitcoms where you're like, they don't do the same thing at all.
Yeah.
Over and over. In which it'll be interesting. I keep saying, because the color episodes, they don't follow a lot of convention. So I'm going to be curious if you're going to be like, you're going to watch like one that everybody hates. You're like, I love this. It's a fresh take. I don't know what you're going to do.
I hope I do.
We'll have to see. So how many whistles would you give this?
Yeah, 6.
I'd give it 7, 8. I think I'm going to give it 8.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right.
8, because I mean, the combination of the dog and it throws a wrinkle. And like I said, I enjoy Manhunt episodes more than I enjoy Aunt B romance episodes.
Oh, for sure.
So any final thoughts?
No, really wonderful to see you. Your skin regimen is going great. Really glad to see that the eye cream is starting to work.
Thank you. And now you're those antidepressants they've put you on are really putting you in a better mood too. I can tell.
Good.
So check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. And if you think about it, subscribe. Next week, we'll do Man in the Middle. And until then, thanks a lot, Blue.
Looking to see you, Malcolm in the Middle.